Leave is granted. Is some member now seeking the call? Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise in support of the Hamilton City Council Parana Park Vesting Bill 2010 at its first reading. And I do want to say at the outset, Mr Speaker, that Labour will be supporting this bill through to Select Committee, because we will be very interested to hear if there are any issues with regard to this bill. Currently, it's Labour's perspective that this bill is not controversial. However, we don't know if there are any descendants. It appears that there may not be. I think the former member, the member who spoke prior, who is sponsoring this bill, let us know that the original owner of the bill was not married. However, that's not to say that we don't know that there are descendants lurking about somewhere in Hamilton who may want to have something to say about this. However, I do want to thank the member David Bennett for bringing this bill forward on behalf of Hamilton City Council. My only wish is that the member would also agree with Hamilton City Council over pursuing a train service between Hamilton and Auckland. It would be great to see him support that initiative from the Hamilton City Council as well as this one, because while this is a useful bill, I don't think it would be quite as important to the local population of Hamilton today as if that member was actually supporting the initiative to establish a passenger train service between Hamilton and Auckland. So just take the opportunity to ask him to consider that initiative from the Hamilton City Council as well. But, Mr Speaker, the member is quite right about the history of Parana Park, but I would have liked to have heard a bit more passion about the beauty of Parana Park. It's just a stunning part of our city because it's on the east side of the river and it is located right up against the river. And I think the important thing about the history of this piece of land is that it is now back in public ownership, so that everyone in Hamilton and visitors to Hamilton can make use of that very beautiful piece of land. But that was not always the case. It was actually in private hands during the course of its history, and it's really wonderful to see that the Hamilton City Council has got the ownership of that land. It actually does make that available to the good people of Hamilton because it is such a special part of our city. And it's a special part of our city because not only is it alongside and adjoined to Memorial Park, where so many special occasions, and particularly the Anzac Dawn Parade occurs every year in our city, and then later on a civic ceremony on Anzac Day a bit later on, so hosts two major Anzac ceremonies on Anzac Day every year. But it is also a place where many other activities take place. A lot of weddings take place there. Many picnics take place there. I've even attended union protests at Parana Park. It's a very, very important part of our city, and yes, open to the public for a whole range of activities, and it's a very important part. So the bill that we are addressing ensures that the Hamilton City Council can use the park for all those many diverse ways in which it's currently used. Because the original intention, going back to George Parr and his will, was that he gifted it to Hamilton in 1929 with the intention for it to be used as a playground, and it is. A playground for children, but also with the intention that the house on that land was to be used as a children's convalescent home for patients from Waikato Hospital. And clearly George Parr was a man who loved children, because this was clearly at the forefront of his mind when he gifted this land, that he was gifting this to the children of Hamilton, which I think is just such a fantastic thing to be doing. But I do wonder what he would think if he were alive today about the way in which this current government is actually taking away rights from children, cutting the funding to early childhood education, doing those sorts of things. Because, look, this playground, I know, is a place where many local early childhood education services actually take children along to for a bit of a day trip. And those are the very sorts of things that are going to be under threat because of the cuts to funding that this government's put in place, because it is actually the field trips, the excursions that many of those centres are looking at cutting out. And I think that would be a great shame, because certainly the playground at Parana Park is a wonderful site for people to be visiting, and certainly for young children to be visiting as well. But, Mr Speaker, earlier this year there was a very significant event that took place on that very bank of the Waikato River, where local members of Parliament, local city councillors, people involved with restoring and keeping Hamilton's history came together to celebrate the restoration of a gunboat that's pretty important to Hamilton's history as well. And that's the PS Rangariri. And it was a very interesting event because we gathered on the opposite bank of the Waikato River to get on board what I would describe as a barge. It's probably even overstating what we were getting onto. It was really like a floating platform. Got on at one side of the river and motored across the other side of the river to land just right by Parana Park. And the fascinating thing that happened was that we were having rotten peaches thrown at us while we were doing this. Well, why is that, Mr Speaker? Very important part, very interesting part of New Zealand's history is that this was apparently what happened when the PS Rangariri first trawled up the rivers of the mighty Waikato River. That local Māori were so concerned, and remember this was the period just following the land wars. They were worried about the presence of this boat on their river, and they threw rotten peaches at it because it was the time of the year when peaches were abundant. And so here we were just earlier this year in 2010 recreating that moment without as much grandeur, because what we were in fact celebrating was the restoration of the PS Rangariri, and it now resides in its restored state after much money from the New Zealand Government and from the Hamilton City Council being put towards restoring that. It now sits there undercover, not at risk of having the floodplains of the Waikato River cause any more damage to it, but also with all the stories associated with the PS Rangariri around it as well. And I think that's another really important part of Parana Park and its associated memorial park, is that it actually contains the stories of Hamilton as well. And so there were stories that are now there, written for everyone to go and see, about the people who were involved with the PS Rangariri, about its arrival. I was particularly fascinated about a story of the women who first arrived on the PS Rangariri when they came up the Waikato River, and a story about a particularly gutsy female for those days who decided that she wasn't going to wait for the captain of the ship or of the boat to have the opportunity to make land first. She wanted to be the first one, and she threw off her shoes and goodness knows what else to leap into the waters of the mighty Waikato and run up onto the banks and be the first person from that boat to actually land. And she would have stepped aboard, she would have stepped on land not too far away from Parana Park. And I think I don't believe David Bennett was there at the time. This is many, many years ago. But that woman claimed her place in history, and I think it's a jolly fine story to be able to read when visiting Parana Park. Mr Speaker, I am not going to talk too much more about the importance of this piece of land to our city and therefore in support of this bill, but I did just, before I came down to speak on this bill, just had a quick Google of Parana Park and found a really interesting site where a lovely photo, beautiful photo of Parana Park is. Unfortunately, the person who had put this up on the internet had misspelt it, and it's Pirana Park. So many of the contributions and comments about this beautiful photo are of telling the person to get the spelling right, because Parana Park is Parana Park. However, there are many interesting stories that people have added to their very fond memories of Parana Park. And I'd have to say that supporting this bill has been so popular among Labor members that I've really had to fight off some of my colleagues to be able to take a call on this bill, because there are so many Labor MPs who have very fond memories of this particular piece of land in particular, and they're going to enjoy putting that forward in this debate as well. And just want to commend, look forward to the select committee process on this, see if there are any descendants of George Parr who might want